Hello, welcome to the Analyst Inside Cricket with me, Simon Hughes. Simon Mann still away on his holidays, sunning himself somewhere, but I'm happy to say that I've got the same guest back that spoke on the first T20, Deep Dasgupta, who was a former Indian batsman and current commentator. Deep, thanks very much for giving your time again for following the series. We didn't speak after the second match, which was a much tighter affair. In Chennai, and then England have rather against the form book, I would say, have won today by 26 runs in Rajkot. A game actually which at the halfway stage I felt England perhaps didn't have enough runs, although quite a lot of the pundits were saying the pitch looked very, very good, and I wasn't sure about it. And actually it proved to be the case that India struggled and eventually were declining to 145 for 9, so fell 20-odd runs short. How did you see it? Did the result surprise you, actually, having seen England make 170 in the first innings?
So I wasn't surprised in terms of England winning it. I was surprised at the margin of the victory. I thought it's going to be a lot closer either way, whether it's India winning or England winning. I thought the margin would be a lot closer than that. And that's what I was a little surprised. But let's be honest, this series so far has been about the bowlers. It hasn't been about the batters. It's been about how well the bowlers have bowled, that's one, and how the batters still haven't got an answer to those questions, whether it's the English batters against Indian spin, or it's the Indian batters against the pace and the hard length that the English faster bowlers are bowling. So I think it's been a really good series as far as bowling is concerned, and I'm unfortunately batting right through the series has been a little disappointing so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an understatement. It's the right thing to say. It's disappointed me, actually, that both teams seem to be obsessed with trying to hit sixes today. And at times it came off. I mean, Liam Livingstone obviously hit some lusty blows towards the end of the England innings, but it seemed to me, and I posted this on Twitter actually, that there seems to be a lack of finesse in batting when the conditions aren't quite in your favour. It's not an absolute road, as this pitch wasn't. The ball didn't really carry through to the keeper early on in the game, and therefore, I remember actually Phil Salt, I think he hit his second ball for 4 down the ground, but he didn't time it at all, and the ball sort of came off a thick edge. And from then on, the batting seemed intent on smacking it over the top for 6 without any thought about playing an in-between game. And, just related to that, there's been quite a lot of talk, actually, about Joe Root being someone who might come back into the England T20 side. He's been playing very well in the SA20. And he seems like the sort of guy who might have the game for this sort of track.
Absolutely, Simon. And I'm not surprised. And I think when first time I saw the next generation coming through, next generation, when I mean the likes of Phil Salt or Surya, the Samsons, and also talking about this generation which are playing right now international cricket, they've been brought up on T20 cricket. And they've been brought up on power hitting 4s and 6s. That's fine. When the pitches are absolutely blasted and like highways, it's fine. It's not turning an inch. It's not seaming an inch. Coming onto the bat, not stopping, it's fine. You can just hit through the line. You can close your eyes, hit through the line. But the moment when the pitch starts playing a little differently, start favoring just a little bit, not even a lot for the bowler, just that little bit, that's when I think most of the modern day cricketers or especially batters, the batting is very one-dimensional. And I'm sure because you've been part of coaching and grassroots level and at the highest level as well, and this is one of my biggest concerns. While it's good, your attacking skill sets have improved drastically in the last 5-7 years. Talking about power and hitting sixes and all of that, that's brilliant. But what's the other side? The other side of the story is, unfortunately, the adaptability is going, right? A lot of, for example, I mean, we keep talking about you can't read from the hand and stuff like that about, wrist spinners and all. But the challenge with modern day batters is you don't have that kind of time, because first thing you got to pick is line and length. And if you see, most of the batters are playing the line and the length. They're not playing which side the ball's going to turn. So it's very kind of, okay, we keep kind of criticizing them, But then what they're trying to do is pick the line, and play the shot, right? So they don't have that kind of time to kind of see the release of the ball and then judge everything else. So that's the reason we see, I mean, not just about overseas batters, you see even subcontinental batters, they are struggling against spin.
Yeah.
And that's predominantly because there isn't much time, because most of your time is spent on judging line and length and positioning your body to hit that big shot. And that concerns me going forward.
Yeah, actually, it's an interesting point, because a lot of these guys grooving their game, aren't they now, by throwdowns and maybe bowling machines, and the bowlers themselves aren't allowed to bowl in the nets too much. I mean, maybe the spinners do, but the seamers tend not to. And you're sort of grooving a particular kind of almost a mechanical way of playing, rather than I suppose a human way of playing, which is to sort of adapt to the ball and watch it onto the bat. I mean, I counted today, there were 18 wickets fell in the match. 13 of them were to what I would call glorified slogging. I mean, Harry Brooks had a big sweep. I mean, that wasn't a slog, that was more the sweep. But quite a lot, there was a lot of top edges, a couple of brilliant catches. Jofra Archer took a brilliant catch, didn't he, running back? There was some England wickets. They were trying to just mow it out the ground and miss-hitting it. 13 of the 18 wickets to fall were, and I mean, I know it's T20, but, you can score runs without having to bludgeon it. You can get 10 and over with 3 twos and a boundary along the ground.
Exactly so. And this is what when I look at younger kids, they want to play those big shots. But when I see them at, it's like you're in your year 7s and you're trying to, study what you would in the uni. So it's difficult. I mean, you've got to learn the grammar of the sport, of batting. I mean, listen, cricket has changed a lot. Okay, you and I, we both agree it has changed a lot. But the basics and the fundamentals of the game, they're still the same. The fundamentals don't change, right? Wait for the ball, watch the ball onto the bat. Those things will never change, no matter whether you're scoring 300 in a 20-over game. Those fundamentals won't change. And unfortunately, at times I see, especially at the younger age group, guys kind of overlooking the basics and want to jump into a lot more complicated stuff like power hitting. And because bottom line is, I look at it very simply. A 6 is basically an extension of a defense. You start defending, then you start pushing your bat through for 4s or hitting the gaps, and then you meet it a little early in the air with angle of the bat. But bottom line, you still have to get your body in that position. You got to make sure, and it's tougher because you got to make sure you keep that form going for longer, right? And those things, if you don't know how to defend the ball, chances are you won't be consistent hitting those 6s. Maybe 2 out of 10, fine. But that's the other thing, right? A good knock is basically you need to play 10 balls and score 20. Technically, you're still playing 10 deliveries, right? I mean, your time or when I played, our good knock would be about 100, right? We're talking about 100, 150. We're talking about a 30-run inning here, or a 20-ball inning or a 10-ball inning.
God of batting there, having something to say about what you're saying, I think probably.
Yeah, so, I mean, I know it's difficult. Okay, it's a different skill set. But I think you still have to, it's like you're doing your uni, right? You still have to do your GCSEs, you got to do your A-levels, and then you decide where you want to go. Or rather, even after GCSEs, you decide where you want to go. I mean, not before GCSEs, right? So I think till GCSEs, you got to still keep going and doing everything, get your fundamentals right, and then you decide what you want to do.
Yeah. Well, just looking at the game in a bit more detail. So England actually made a reasonable start today. Duckett played well. I mean, we've been talking about maybe him going into the middle order, but he actually played very well at the top today, and he hit some powerful shots against the seamers. Mohammed Shami back into the Indian team. And of course, actually, I mean, the opening bowler, the left armour for India, who didn't play today. I mean, I thought they missed him, actually, because he's a very good opening bowler. There is his pace cleverly and so on. But anyway, Mohammed Shami came in instead. Then England lost their way totally in the middle of the innings. They lost 5 wickets for 33 runs in 6 overs, most of them to Varun Chakrabarti, who's a fascinating bowler. I hear that he's been working on his game a lot in league cricket. He's been playing in, sort of almost domestic amateur cricket to try and perfect his variations, and too good again for England in the middle order.
Yeah, and we were discussing about Varun after the first T20I as well. I mean, he's a smart guy. He's obviously very, very matured. He hasn't come through the ranks, so the amount of game time wasn't that much. But I think last few years, 3-4 years, I think he's spending a lot of time, kind of into his craft. And something that recently he's been working on is getting more topspin. And I think we spoke about the action and all of that. But beside that, it is important. I'm again, when I see a bowler like that, I'm looking at it from a very batting point of view. Right? If I have to encounter something like that, or if I have to tell somebody as a coach, what am I talking about? And that's where I think, you've got to be very, very careful in terms of your game plan. I don't think it's going to be very easy to, kind of hit him for those big shots off the front foot. Back foot would make more sense. But again, it's like you've got to be smart about it. If he's bowling well, if it's his day, don't look at taking him for 40 in his 4. Wickets in hand, look at the other 16 overs, right? Look at 24, 28 out of those 4. Make sure you don't lose wickets, so you have that cushion there for the other 16. And that 16, you look to get 140-ish there. So 140, 160 maybe there, or even more, whatever. And then another 25. So that's how you get to 180, 185. But the issue is, as of now, I don't see, and that's the disappointing bit, I don't see a game plan against Varun Chakrabarti. Right. And this, I'm sure you've been told, and you've said this to all your students as well. If you're not reading a spinner or even a seam bowler, play for everything that is coming into you. Right.
I suppose, really.
Exactly. So basically you kind of take away the leg before and the bold options. Yeah. And play inside the line, right? Play everything as if it's coming into you. And if it leaves you, too bad. You can live with that. Right. So that's like option, percentage cricket that we keep talking about. And the disappointing bit is it's been a couple of games already, and I haven't seen somebody work that bit out. I'm not saying you have to go after Varun Chakrabarti, but then, be smart, because this whole series hasn't been a 220 kind of a series so far. It's always been that 160, 170. And in 170-ish games, you can afford to let one bowler go for 26, 27, and then look at the other.
Yeah, and the last thing you want to do is lose a load of wickets, which, of course, England did. We'll look at the Indian reply after this short break. So just pick up on what you said about Chakrabarti as well. And Harry Brooks said in the press after the first game, and a couple of people were amused by this comment, actually, that the atmosphere, what he called
the fog,
fog or whatever, it's harder to read Chakrabarti in the first match in Calcutta, which of course made a lot of us old sages laugh, because it was something that the England chairman of selectors at the time in 1993, Ted Dexter, the great Ted Dexter, said about Calcutta when England lost the Test match there in 1993. We were talking about it on our last podcast, actually. This match I was at, actually. And, he blamed the smog for England being defeated there, which was obviously farcical. But what I would say is that talking to a lot of modern batters, they do find wrist spinners hard to decipher with a white ball under lights.
Yeah.
Because of the sort of the seam is not that distinct.
Exactly.
There's a glint off the white, sort of the laminate of the ball, which kind of is a bit blindy. And interestingly, and just related to this, and you can kind of, talk about it from a batting point of view, Shane Warne used to say that one of the best assets a leg spinner can use is to bowl with the sun behind you.
Yeah.
Because it makes the ball glint in a certain way. If you bowl with the sun head on, so it's shining at you as you're bowling, the batter's got a great view of the ball. But if you bowl with the sun sort of at an angle behind you, it does make it, the part of the ball is in shadow, and it's much harder for the batter to pick, even in the daylight.
Yeah, that's so true. Because a lot of, at least in India, a lot of us were taught to look at the seam of the ball. And then what also Warney used to do was he used to bowl leg spin with a cross seam, So suddenly, somebody who's used to seeing the seam, and suddenly you see there's a difference in how the ball's been released. The action is the same, but the seam position is different. Suddenly as a batter, you're thinking, oh, this might behave differently. It's not something which you're used to. So I think, that seam position, and because, yes, you're right. It's very difficult, that wide ball, because especially when the spinners come on after 6-7, once a ball is a little older, it's very difficult to kind of see the seam position. That's one. But my having spoken to a lot of these batters, this modern day generation, they say it's difficult because you're not thinking about picking which side the ball is going to go. You're picking the length. If it's fuller, you're slog sweeping. Right? If it's shorter, you back foot and you go onto the back foot and looking for a cut or a pull. So, and if you're looking which side the ball is going or which way the ball is going to turn, you've lost the battle straight away. In T20 cricket, you don't have that time. So a lot of these guys, they basically play the length and the line. More than the line is the length that they play. So it's so, I guess they're not, the main focus is more on watching that.
Well, yeah, as I was going to say, it sounds as if they're almost playing the ball off the pitch, playing the length of the ball rather than the release of the ball. Yeah. It's a really interesting distinction. I was a terrible batsman, but I never learnt, and I did an interview with a number of players for a book I wrote many years ago, actually, and I've had a lot of mirth directed at me for writing this book. It was called Who Wants to Be a Batsman? And everyone, well, what the hell do you know about batting? So I said, well, not much, but I've asked a lot of batsmen for their view. Yeah. And one of the things they said was how carefully they look at the ball, the top players, the Ricky, Desmond Haynes, whoever, they talk about looking at the actual hand position and even trying to read the writing on the ball, to see exactly where the seam is and all that. Yeah. Modern player, especially in this sort of format, sounds as if they're not really looking at that. They're looking more at what length is it, what's the trajectory, what's the pace, have I got the time to pull it, sit, drive it, whatever.
That's right. That is so true. And that is the reason I know a lot of us as old timers, they keep, you can't read it off the hand. They can, if they want to, they can. It's just that it's a choice they have to make, and the choice that they have made. So you telling me all the top batters, they can't read it? Yes, they can. But it is a choice. They don't have that kind of time. So it's basically you're looking at the line and length predominantly, and playing your shots. Because with the grounds not being as big as they used to be, the bat and everything else, and the power that's coming to the sport now, if you get it anywhere near the middle of the bat, irrespective how long the boundaries are, you're going to get it out of the park. Right? So I guess a lot of it is that. And it's not that they can't read, it's just that it's a
mind almost, really.
It's a mind, yeah. Exactly so.
Training your mind to do it a certain way. And actually, Liam Livingstone today, it worked for him. He did hit some big blows, got 4 sixes, I think, and he got England up to sort of semi-respectability, actually with the help of Rashid and Mark Wood as well at the end, who got a useful 20-odd runs for that last wicket pair. Then India went into bat, Sampson out, 3rd time in a row to Archer's short ball, trying to pull it and getting tucked up, and I don't think his pull shot is... He plays a fantastic pull shot when the ball is waist high and he deposits it miles into the stand. But when the ball just gets up a bit higher to him, he seems to get a bit restricted.
Yes, and again, if you look at modern day batters, there is nothing called back foot anymore.
Yeah.
So the difference between Tilak Verma's last innings, the match-winning one, if you see, he's still a little more orthodox. He has that back foot which goes across. So once you go across, you open up your body, you open up the leg side field, right? But if you look at the modern day cricketer, most of them, it would be a front foot press where you're looking, because you know there's going to be one bouncer, right? So you're not worried about the bouncer or the short ball per se. So you're looking to get onto the front foot and on top of the ball. And what happens then is, when you're facing 140 plus, that becomes a challenge. And one thing we all have to understand, as good as franchise cricket, there's some leagues which are very good, like the IPL, the Blast, or the Big Bash. As good as they are, there's still a massive difference between franchise cricket and international cricket. The best of franchise cricket, you'll have 2 world-class bowlers, and then domestic good bowlers, but not world-class bowlers, right? But in a team like which India is playing right now, the English bowling unit, that's a top class bowling unit, right? Almost everyone is 140 plus, if not 140 plus, has that. For example, Bryden Cast, he bowls a heavy ball, right? It just skids through. He's a lot quicker than it seems, or the speed gun will tell you. He's a lot quicker than that. So once you're playing at that level, you've got all 5 bowlers, they're relentless, they're coming at you, right? There is no release bowler, so to say. Most of the teams wouldn't have that, right? And that's where I think you've got to be smarter and got to understand, as successful as you are in franchise cricket, it is still a step up when you're playing for the country. And then make those adjustments. And that's where I was on air last game talking about someone like Sanju Samson. When somebody's bowling at 145, 150, you don't fight pace, right? You use pace. The moment you try and fight 145, and that you're talking about Jofra Archer, Mark Wood, top class bowlers, it's not going to be easy. You can't win that battle. You're always going to end up on the losing side. Instead, again, I'm going to go back to Tilak Verma innings. I'm talking about because of subcontinental players who don't get to face 145 that often, or for the matter anyone. But if you look at that innings, most of his runs was, he went across the line, came to his body, used the pace. A lot of those shots were, behind square on the legs.
Yeah.
And I believe those are the things which would differentiate between a good franchise player and a good international player. Is how smart are you when you make that step up?
So in a way, England's strategy for using those high-paced bowlers, it certainly paid off today, and it's sort of starting to pay off. I was a bit sort of uncertain about whether, going with full pace for one side and the other side going with about 5 spinners, whether India would be the team that would obviously win each time. But it's now sort of more level pegging. But just to add a little bit to that conversation, I thought England today changed their pace well, whereas Wood in particular has been a bit wary of using a slower ball. Today he did, and I thought he used it well. I thought Bryden Cast's slower ball was good. We know about Archer and his variations of pace. So they showed some good cutters. So actually did Jamie Overton as well. But then, the kind of the pièce de résistance for England today was Rashid, and he got that big wicket of Tilak Varma out. And I think, it was a lovely artistic piece of bowling by Rashid. 4 overs, only 1 wicket for 15, but he didn't concede a boundary. And he toyed with the batters with some lovely slow sort of looping leg breaks, which again, to me, exposed another little deficiency in Indian batting against spin, which of course was really exposed in the New Zealand series, the Test series, which you lost 3-0, and a lot of spin wickets to spinners in that series. But I just thought actually they were looking like they were sort of playing with a toothpick or something at that time. They just looked very, very uncertain. And I know Rashid is an excellent bowler, and of course using the advantage of the white ball under lights and so on with the risk, but still, it looked quite sort of inept, some of the batting.
That is true to a great extent. One is we've got to, after that first T20I, where I thought Rashid bowled way too quick, suddenly the last game, the second, he bowled beautifully. I mean, I was just looking at his range. His slowest ball was 69 Ks, and his fastest was somewhere around mid-90s. I mean, we are talking about a difference of a range of 25, 26 Ks. That's huge. For a batter, if you're kind of having to look what pace it's coming, forget, it's a googly or a leggy or whatever. It's a massive thing. I mean, a range of 25 Ks is huge. So one, he's bowled beautifully in the last two T20s, no two ways about it. After that first one, I think he figured out the right pace and what he needs to do. Obviously, he's got about 20 years of experience playing T20 cricket, almost. So one is that. Secondly, talking from an Indian batter's point of view, again, what he's done really well is not give pace to the batters, right? Anything that you want, you got to create as a batter yourself. So, I mean, generally speaking, the variation was fabulous. And I don't know, I mean, when I see the release, you can figure that out. Second game onwards, second T20, the ball's coming out so beautifully from his hand, especially the slow ones. I mean, anyone can bowl fast. You can just go and bowl fast, as in fast leg spins I'm talking about, right? You can just go and bowl fast. But I think the art is bowling slower. And that's where you can see that release from his hand, the wrist working, the revs on the ball. I mean, beautiful bowling from Rashid. And from a batting point of view, like I said, I mean, it's difficult. And your Rajkot it's not a small venue. It's a decently big venue, right? And especially the square boundaries are pretty big. And what he did really well was, if you see the ball that he was bowling, the slower ones, it was like a little back of length where, it's easier. The slow balls, it's easier to hit out the ground because then you step out and you can get your full body behind the ball. But if it's to cut, it's very difficult to cut the ball or get any pace out of it. Yeah, pace on that shot. So if you look at the way he was bowling, the length that he bowled, the slow ones, it was a very, very smart bowling. It wasn't just, just coming and bowling. There's a plan behind that bowling. Slower ones would be tad bit shorter. The fuller ones, maybe a quicker ones would be less. So I think it's been really, really good. And also what happens then is, Sunday you're playing at 140, 145, right? 4 bowlers at 140-ish. And then Sunday, somebody is bowling at 70, 72, right? And generally then also what happens is, and I'm talking from a very Indian batter's point of view, right? You've seen through the fast bowling, you see a spinner, you're like, right, this is my time now. You know what I'm saying? So and then you find someone like Rashid and the kind of form he's in right now. Yeah, it's not going to be easier.
Some people have asked why he hasn't attracted more attention for the IPL. He hasn't ever really had a decent run in the IPL. Could you sort of
I mean, you know how, I mean, you've been part of an IPL franchise, you know how difficult it is to kind of accommodate. You can play only 4 overseas. So it's basically demand and supply, and you want those 4 overseas to be players or skill that is not available with your Indian players. So generally you would get rest spinners. Then you basically looking at finishers, seam bowling all-rounders, match winners, pure out and out match winners. So when you have to prioritize what skill you're looking at, and again, Simon, you know it better than anyone else. That's where I think overseas spinners, and basically he's not somebody who can bat at numbers 7, 8. Again, I mean, as good as he is with the bat as well, he still is your number 9 kind of a batter. Yeah. So he's kind of, from that extent, one-dimensional, not the best fielder, I'd say. I mean, it's fair to say. He
improved his fielding a lot, actually, but you're right. Yeah. I mean, principally, you're saying that the Indian community have a lot of wrist spinners. And, you're not going to... It's like selling, I don't know, ice to the Eskimos almost, isn't it? A little bit, yeah. So I'd take that. What about, just as a final point about the game today, so Rashid had that sort of, key spell in the middle there, and India got stuck a bit. Do you think they got their tactics wrong? I mean, it seemed odd to have Dhruv Jurel coming in at about number 10 or number 9 or something.
I think he came after Washington Sundar. And that is the challenge that India would have to figure out, because as of now, India is going in with only one frontline seamer and Hardik. And Hardik can do a job. But I don't think that's a long-term solution. I think long-term you would have to have 2 seamers and then Hardik, right? And for that, and you also want batting till 8, which is fair. I think you need batting till 8 to give that assurance to your top order batters to go out there and bat freely. You can't have 7 batters. So that's where the challenge is for the Indian side. You don't have as many seam bowling all-rounders or bowlers who can bat. Right? For example, you have Bryden Cast who can bat. Jofra Archer can hit a few long balls. Mark Wood can hit a few long balls. Obviously, Jamie Overton he's better than a decent batter. He's better than a decent batter.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, as far as Indian steamers are concerned, fast bowlers are concerned, you don't have bowlers who can bat. So straight away, someone like Arshdeep, he can, but obviously he has to improve quite a bit. Mohammad Shami, no. Siraj, no. Bumrah, when he's back, no. So that is a very, very big challenge. Then you kind of have to compromise somewhere. And I think, the selectors would have to, or the coaches in the system would have to figure out a way there.
I suppose Jadeja could come back in instead of Aksa Patel, and then you've got someone at 8 who can. Jadeja's won games hitting straight sixes, hasn't he? Yeah. He won the IPL final, didn't he?
He did. See, Aksa is a good batter as well. Unfortunately, hasn't done much with the batters yet. So is Washington, but I still think there are a few. This puzzle is not solved as yet. I think Yashasvi might come back. I think he's a talent. You can't keep him away from this format either.
As well.
So he comes in, Abhishek, what you want from him. But I still think, someone like, and obviously missing Rinku Singh a lot. Dhruv Jurel, as good as he is, but he's not your number 7. So you've got to have, and what generally happens in T20 cricket, and I guess in most of the countries is, you don't have specific 6, 7 as in number 7 batters. You have these top order batters who've done well, scored a lot of runs, and then you put them to bat at number 7. And the asking from a number 7 is very different from a number 4. So Dhruv Jurel is a very good number 4-5. But when it comes to 7, his job is very different. And that's where I think Rinku Singh is so used to batting at 6-7. Hardik, the reason why MS was a game changer, was a legend, is because he was just a finisher. Like in baseball, you have specific pitchers who would finish the games for you. Right? And that's something that India has someone in Rinku Singh, would also need a couple of other options as well apart from him. Hardik is there, but then Hardik at times bats at 4-5. That's a very, very specialized job, 6-7, finishing off games. There could be days like today where there are 4 early wickets, 5 early wickets, and then manage it. Or there'll be days you need to just come out and hit the last ball 6. Right? So I think it's a very specialist job, and we'll need to work on that as well.
Interesting, actually. So India are very much a work in progress with this T20 team. And I suppose England too, although they're starting to come together as a bowling unit. It's just about whether they get the batting right, whether someone like Joe Root needs to come in. Well, we'll see in due course anyway. So England managing to get over the line in the end, just squeezing India, taking wickets, and finally it was like 40 off 2 overs. They were never going to do that. So well played to England. They kept the series alive. So it's now 2-1 with 2 to play. Deep, thanks very much for your time. We'll hope to catch you maybe at the end of the series again. Some good thoughts there. But certainly the series is sort of kept alive by England finding the mojo today with the ball. But I still think maybe they could do a bit more with the bat. Now, the next cricket on this podcast site will actually be the Women's Ashes Test match, which of course is starting on Thursday in Melbourne. And that will be covered daily by our sister podcast, Storylines. You can find that on any podcast platform, Storylines with Melissa Story and Nikki Chowdhury. So look out for that, and we'll be back at the end of the week to review the series of this T20 matches overall. Thank you very much for your time, Deep, and thanks everyone for listening. Great. Lovely, thank you.
Oh, lovely. Not a problem.
We're going to drag that out quite a long time.
No, that's all right.